These are people that have done a lot for Cave Spring, and I believe that you say that you're willing to share your experiences for educational purposes and perhaps pass on. So we'll just begin with however far back you want to go back, and you were doing
Well,
great.
I can go back a long ways as far as I'm concerned, because my folks came from Alabama, but I don't remember ever having lived in Alabama. And my daddy was a rural letter carrier, and he stopped every morning. He came by here and left the papers with us, and so that we could have our mail earlier than. And then we had a general mercantile store down in Forney, Alabama, and also mule barns and land and so forth.
Cotton gin?
Cotton gin, yeah. And so my folks were always involved in things that pertain to the country. We always enjoyed being part of the country. But when we came here, as I said, I don't remember it. And but Miss Lucille and Mr. Jack Montgomery lived across the street. And Grandma Montgomery, she was 90-something years old, and I was the only child on the hill, so I just ran back and forth across the street to them, because more cars passed in 10 minutes than passed in 2 weeks when I was a child. We're just not very well, you know, didn't have very many people running up and down the highway. Not a whole lot of people had cars, in fact.
Did you say where that was, like from here?
Right across the street.
No kidding.
Miss
Okay.
Lucille and Mr. Jack Montgomery lived in that big brick house over there.
All right, so that's the Montgomery
And
house.
so I was, as I said, I was the only child. Faye Simmons Mathis lived next door. She had 2 sisters. Cousin John had a little service station. It's not there now. Anyway, he had a little service station there. And my mother loved a good cold Coca-Cola. And every day I would run down to Cousin John's and get her a good cold Coca-Cola. His Coca-Colas were in ice. You know how they'd have those big Coca-Cola, I don't know what they call them, but boxes, yeah. And they would have that block ice in it. And nothing got Cokes as cold as that block ice did. But I always loved Cave Spring. I always enjoyed, and Mother, I didn't realize she was doing this when I was little, but when I got big enough to walk downtown by myself, she called people along the way, and she said, "Jackie's walking downtown. Call me when she passes your house." So I had no idea she was making sure that I was safe, but she did. So that was, this was a fun place to grow up, because you didn't, I guess you may have had to be afraid of some people, but my folks never taught me to be afraid of anybody, so I was very blessed in that respect. But John, honey, I've about exhausted my resources. I reckon if you have some questions, I might be able to answer them, but as far as...
Was the railway station in operation then?
Yes. In fact, I know y'all gonna think my mother didn't pay attention to me, but she really did. But there wasn't very much to do, and that train come by, I would grab a hold and ride it halfway up that way and then swing back off of it. It was, you know, just something to do that...
This railroad went all the way into Anderson, Alabama. And during the war, it was real active, because they would haul troops and supplies from Fort McClellan to Atlanta and
It
wherever.
was so sad.
I wasn't
remember-
living here then, this is the
No.
stories I've been told.
When I was little and I would hear that train, you know how bad a train sounds when it's going, ooh. And I would look out the window and I'd see those soldiers standing up in the cars as they passed by. And I couldn't help but cry because I knew they were leaving their home. And I knew how awful it would be if I had to leave my home, you know. But anyway, it was, this is a wonderful place to have children, because everybody sort of, as I said, helps take care of the children that are here. If you see one that looks like they might be going to get into trouble, you just go ahead and say, you better stop that. And they didn't give you any lip back. Nowadays, I think that might be a little hard to do, to correct somebody else's child. But at that time, we looked after each other.
How often, when you finished high school, you were here,
Yeah.
okay, and so did you, what did you do at that time?
I went to college
And,
at the University of Georgia.
right,
Uh-huh.
and
And
so you took the, how did you get to Athens?
I had a car.
And that was, about when was that?
Well, I graduated high school in 1949, was it?
No.
No, not that. When was it then?
1945, wasn't it?
I graduated high school in 1945, right?
Okay,
And then,
We finished the University of Georgia in 1949.
yeah, graduated Georgia in 49. I taught school at Ben Hill first,
In Atlanta.
in Atlanta,
While we were
right
gone.
outside of Atlanta. While Horace was in pharmacy school, I taught school. And
did you meet at the University of Georgia, or you had known each other
did
before?
we meet at the university?
Yeah.
Well, actually, we met, Horace's uncle was a funeral director. And Faye's mother died. And he came here to pick up the body. And we met at that time, but we didn't date at that time. But,
So when did the pharmacies first start here?
well, after Horace and I got married, he decided he'd go back to school and study to be a pharmacist because they did not have a drugstore here as such at that time. So Mr. Lindsay told Horace, said, if you want to come back here, I'll build you a drugstore building. So he did, right where it is now. But there were two buildings there. One was a 10-cent store building and the other one was a small drugstore. So Mr. Lindsay took that other store in and made a big store out of it for us. So
Was it connected to the store on the corner where Martha Jane's was still at that time?
Yeah, it was, yeah. That
Okay,
was
so-
it. That was where it was.
What about Martha Jane?
Huh?
What about Martha Jane?
She was there first. She was no, excuse me.
Can I interrupt?
Sure.
Mr. Lindsay, there was a vacant building where our original drugstore was. It was a building next door, and it was a little 10-cent store. And when I came back, well, he told me that we got ready to come back. Well, he'd like me to come back to Case Springs and put up a drugstore, and he'd build us a building and so forth. So when we got ready to come back to Case Springs, I went to Mr. Lindsay and told him that we were about ready to come back. I was about ready to graduate from pharmacy school. And so, to make a long story short, he built a building there. And when Mr. Lindsay passed away, his son and I were real good friends, and we had talked about building a store over next to the bank, because we owned that lot also. Anyway, I went to Joel and told him that would they be interested in selling where we were at the drugstore and the little 10-cent store next door. So he said, well, he had some brothers. He said, let me talk to my brothers and see what they say. So when he came back, the price I had in mind was only $1,000 different from the price that he made me. So we agreed to. So to make a long story short, we tore the middle wall out between the two stores and combined the little 10-cent store with the present drugstore to make it like it is today.
And we never closed the door.
Never closed the door, never missed a day.
Never missed a day being open.
We had a soda fountain in the old drugstore, and it was a real gathering place for kids, especially the school for the deaf. At that time, the school for the deaf had about 400 or 500 people, students. And on Saturday, they would get, Saturday, they would get, they let them out at noon, and then we had a few stools and a couple of booths, and they would run, the boys would, all the way from the school for the deaf to see who's going to get to sit at the stool and get to sit in the booths. And the little ones, the smaller children would come on Friday afternoon, and the supervisor would bring them, and they would walk over town and so forth and so on.
So 5-cent ice cream cone.
5-cent Cokes. That was in 1953.
Wow.
A long time ago when we opened.
And was the theater across the street then?
Yeah, it was still in operation. On Saturday, they'd have a popcorn machine over there, and
Hillis Hollingsworth was the one running it.
pardon?
Hillis Hollingsworth was he the one running it?
He was the one of the stockholders. It was owned by stockholders throughout the town. They sold stock to build a building to put the theater in. Your folks had some stock in it. Of course, they went down to the thing. The building just finally closed, and then they sold that building to Mr. Jackie's stepfather, Mr. Sponsor. And he lowered the first floor and filled in the second floor, filled in the first floor and made it fit so it wouldn't have the slope in it like most theaters do. And he rented it to a fellow named Mr. Hale for a grocery store. And Mr. Hale operated a grocery store there for several years, and then he finally sold it to Casey's out of Citytown, and they moved down with them now.
How long did the theater operate?
Pardon?
How long did the theater operate?
Right. How long did the theater operate?
Oh, it closed, and we hadn't been here long till it closed. I guess, say, in the early 50s. It closed in the early 50s.
How many years do you think?
I don't know when it opened. I wasn't here when it opened.
So
They had upstairs, back then we had integration, and they had a balcony upstairs where the black people would go for the movies, and white folks would sit down there.
So you would say up until that time, Cave Spring was sort of recreationally inclusive for people, that they didn't feel the necessity to go to Rome or whatever.
Yeah, we never have had any problems with integration in Cave Spring because we all grew up together. I guess that was it. We played together. I played with they lived down here on the other side, and I grew up playing with them.
Yep.
Black children. Loved them all, and so it was not something that we had to become accustomed to.
And I think I mentioned to her too, even going way back, there were some very substantial black communities and families here. So I think maybe people looked at people in a different way than they did in some
The
places.
Chubbs were very respected family. They lived on
Mill Street.
what?
They lived on Mill, talking about the Chubb.
Yeah,
When I got here, they lived on Mill Street. There's a community over in
Booger Hall.
Booger Hollow, Padlock.
Right.
It's called the Chubb community. They have their own church over there that they had when they first came to this. I don't know when they came to this part of the country, but they have a cemetery over there, and nobody's buried there but Chubbs and their relatives.
So, what really stands out in your mind as far as anything that what you feel different about Cave Spring when you drive around or walk around, and what you feel is still the same? Does
Well,
anything strike you there?
It all, I've been here all my life, so I don't know anything. I don't know
So you
anything.
think changes are not that substantial, or they've been so gradual it's difficult to notice?
As far as any changes are concerned, I don't know of anything that's ever made that much difference.
It wasn't too long ago that we didn't have a bank. The bank was built in the 60s.
Okay. So there was never a bank here before then?
Well, there was a private bank, but the state passed a law that in order to have a private bank, you had to have 5 local people on your board of directors. And he couldn't get anybody to serve on his board of directors, so the only thing he had just about was a lending institute. He didn't take your money and lend it out to somebody else. He lived in Gadsden. He would drive in on Monday morning and stay Monday and Tuesday. And then on Tuesday night, he'd go back to Gadsden and he'd close his bank on Wednesday. And he'd come back Thursday morning and stay Friday and Saturday, and he'd go back to Gadsden and come back on Monday. And so they put the cramps on him and told him he's going to have to, either get his 5 people, local people on the board of directors, or he'd have to move. So he approached me one day about buying the bank. I said, what do I know about a bank? I said, I ought to know how to operate the cash register out here. Being facetious. Anyway, so I called Joe. He and I had been buying some real estate together and so forth and so on. I asked him what he thought about it. He said, well, let's look into it. So I have a real good friend in Rome and Citizen by the name of W.D. Tripp, who at one time was chairman of the banking department in the state of Georgia. So we called, made an appointment, went to see him, and we told him what we were wanting, and he said to his secretary, said, Gene, get me whatever the guy at that time was head of the banking department in the state of Georgia, get me Horace on the phone. And in a few minutes he said, I have your partner on the phone. Anyway, he told the guy, said, I have a couple of men here from Cave Spring, and they think they're interested in organizing a bank in Cave Spring. He said, send me an application. For a couple of days he called me and said they had the application. So we filled the application out and sold stock. We limited people to just $5,000 of stock. That's all you could buy. Anyway, to make a long story short, we got in the car one day and we rode. He rode through different towns in Georgia, and he said he knew a new bank over at Rutledge, Georgia. So we rode over to Rutledge, Georgia, and looked at it, and we decided, well, this is about what we need in Cave Spring. So we came back, and Jackie's brother and I owned the lot where the bank is built, and so we sold the lot to him. And then Bill and I had a crew of carpenters and so forth, and electricians, and so we built a bank building, and it wasn't too long until we were in business. And of course, the banks in Rome, they tried to keep us from organizing a bank in Cave Spring because they didn't want to lose the business. Up until about that time, you couldn't borrow any money to build a house in Cave Spring. They wouldn't lend you money. But several people went up there, and one guy I know of got his house about half done, and they called him and told him they were sorry they wasn't going to make a loan. Well, his daddy happened to have some influence. He went up there and they let him borrow the money. And so after we got to, well, before then I think, I had some friends in Citytown who had savings and loan. So they called me one day and said they'd like to talk to me. So we went over there, and before that, well, Joe Lenz and I, we started building a few houses. And we thought, well, if we're going to build houses, we might well sell the lumber. So we opened a builder supply place, Cave Spring Builder Supply, Cline Builder Supply. So we went over to Citytown to see what they wanted, and they told us that they understood that we had bought some land, and they would like to put some money in Cave Spring and finance some houses. So they told us if we build houses, they'd finance them. So to make a long story short, that's what we did, and we had no problems after that. But the bank and loan, they opened up. They were gladly lend people money in Cave Spring to build a house. But we had enough influence on the people that were building houses, so we sent them all to Citytown. And of the people that we sent over to see the town, they never had one foreclosure. Everybody was able to either keep the house or sell it or something. None of the houses we had built ever foreclosed on. And so we were real grateful to this first federal savings and loan in the city of town for volunteering to let us have some finance the houses for us.
I know when we moved to Cave Spring,
Right.
it's something that when we moved to Cave Spring, and we hear from other people too, that there being a bank here, the lumber yard, and everything that you can just walk to, we always thought that was so special compared to other towns where everything is a little bit distance.
They thought it was wonderful that you could walk to all these places and didn't have to get in your car and go
Yeah.
there.
Back when
They
Jack,
heard that when they came to Cave Spring.
when Jack and I first got married, we had we had 2 or 3 groceries, small grocery stores in Cave Springs, and you'd about the middle of the morning, if you decided you wanted a dozen ears of corn or whatever, you could call them up and say whatever you wanted, and they'd deliver them to you. And they'd bill you at the end of the month. They'd send you a bill, and that was one of mine. So we were Cave Spring was probably the last sort of town that ever had a grocery store delivery.
Probably was.
I
Well,
knew Mike's wife, sisters rather. I didn't know his wife. I knew his sisters before he ever they went to school anyway. They were real fine basketball players, and we were happy to have the Burton girls on the basketball team.
Cave Spring has always been a town that everybody wanted to support. Like when we used to have wonderful basketball teams, we went everywhere they went. If they went way out of town, we just went way out of town with them and supported them. So
When we had the drugstore, we had a soda fountain. I said a minute ago, and people that would be traveling through here they got to know that we had a soda fountain. So they'd always take a break and stop by the soda fountain and buy a Coke or ice cream or whatever it was they wanted. And they'd all say, "Oh, I sure, when I retire, I want to move to Cave Spring." I said, "We don't want you when you retire. We want you while you're young, while you're able to do something." Of course, I don't think any of them ever came back, but they'd always say that. They love Cave Spring. They love the little unique kids of it and the beauty of it.
and that may be the savior of the economy of
Pardon?
Cave Spring. I said that may be what keeps the economy going in Cave Springs is the atmosphere. We
It was
hope.
hard. When we first came to Cave Spring, it was hard to buy any land. There's 3 or 4 families that own most of the land outside the city limits, and none of them would sell it because they farmed it. And of course, you know, that's the way to make a living. If you sell it, it's no longer yours. So it was real hard to find a place to build a house. And there was a gentleman who lived down on 411 and just outside the city limit named Ed Perkins, and he decided he was going to quit farming. So he put his house up, his land up for auction, and Bill and I bought several pieces of property. And that's how, and with the help of the first federal savings and loan here, that's how we got started building a few houses in Cave Spring.
outside of Cave Spring going to Rome.
Yeah. And it's interesting too. We're almost in town, but there's still a big piece of farmland right here
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
next to it.
And see, that thing about it is, unless I'm badly mistaken, that land will never be sold.
Really?
It's been in that Montgomery family. The people that own it now live in Atlanta. But I don't think they'll ever sell it. They don't have it. They don't need the money.
Jackie's brother was a doctor here in Cave Spring. He went to school in Cave Spring until he got in the 6th grade, and then he was it 6th grade?
Yeah, went to
Darlington at that time you only had grades 6 through 12, and you had to finish the 5th grade to be accepted to Darlington. So there were 2 or 3 boys that friends of his that they decided they would transfer to Darlington. Mr. Mize's son was one of them, and then one of the Hollingsworth boys was another one. I can't remember. This was before my day. I'm just trying to rehash memory. And Jackie's brother graduated from Garland and went to pre-med school at Auburn. And he went to medical school at the Medical College of Georgia. So when he finished, we didn't have a doctor. So he came back to Case Springs and put up, well, I wasn't here. After Jack and I got married, he came back and he put up a doctor's office. And he practiced medicine until he had to go. He was one ASTP boy. That was a program that the Army had during the war called an Army Specialized Training Program. And some of the boys were fortunate enough, like him, that they put him in the Army and sent him to medical school. And they had to sign a paper if the Army ever needed them, or if the war was when they graduated, and the Army ever needed them, they would have to serve. So it so happened that the Korean War and the Vietnam War came along, and he had to go in and close his office here in Case Springs, go and serve with Uncle Sam for 2 or 3 years before then he came back and he opened up again. But
Where was that office?
Pardon?
Where was his office?
Well, he had an office down, you know where
Where
the
Rip
old,
Montgomery is.
Okay.
he had an office there, but he also had an office down where the old Gray Hotel is.
The old what?
The hotel,
Yeah.
hotel down there, I call it the Gray Hotel, I don't
Yeah.
know
That's
what color it is.
where they're trying to find that Indian cabin.
Yeah,
Was the hotel still in operation in early 50s? It wasn't.
They
I
were-
couldn't remember.
That hotel was closed. There used to be a hotel over there where where the bank's sitting now.
Yeah.
And it was a 2-story, it had columns, oak, and so forth. And back then, on Sundays, there'd be an article in the old news that, about different communities on Case Springs. They'd say, so-and-so just got back from 3-day vacation in Case Springs. They came in and stayed at the hotel.
it was
Yeah.
where the people came and
Right.
vacationed when I was a child.
Is that the building that burned? That's where the bank is? Is that right?
I can't understand.
Is that where the building burned that was the
I never been
bank?
back to the building burning.
Okay, I didn't know if it did or not.
Really, but,
So,
The old hotel down there where they're working on now, her brother at one time had an office downstairs and he had about a 6 or 8 bed clinic upstairs. Most what he used the clinics for all of these people out in the country that having babies. They didn't want to go to the hospital. They wanted him to come to home and deliver them at home, which he did lots of times. And so he put up a clinic up there and he would deliver babies up in that clinic, and when they got ready to go home, he'd send them home. They wouldn't have to go to home to the hospital, and he wouldn't have to drive back and forth to the hospital to see them. Unfortunately, he died at the age of 48 with blood clot.
well, whenever you guys are finished, we're finished. So,
Well, I don't want you to know.
I don't either.
oh,
I'm about exhausted, my.
what do you think, Mike?
I think it's real good. I just want to give Horace a testimonial. I moved here in '66 and started having babies in '67. And you're right, Jackie, y'all never closed. I can remember baby getting sick at 9 o'clock at night and I needed medicine, and Horace would come open the drugstore and let us buy medicine for that baby at 9 o'clock at night on a Saturday or a Sunday.
That's right.
Matter.
Holidays,
Holidays, we
Christmas.
were there, and that's the quality of a small town that I think about. Yeah.
We tried to take care of everybody that
Well, you did.
need medicine.
Well, we needed y'all.
Yeah, it's a two-way street. It's a two-way street.
It was a two-way street, exactly.
Oh, me. I would just like for you to mention about your house next door. That was your family place?
Yes, but we
And-
moved it from Key.
Yes, I helped Doc Patterson move that house.
on
What
the-
year was that?
Gee whiz.
We,
What year did we move that, Daddy? I don't know, but Doc said he was called everything but a white man. Well, see, that house down there has a center part to it, and they took and just cut it right down through the center. Cut it at an angle so that when they stabbed it back together, you couldn't have got a pencil between.
they told us they were gonna cut it in two because it was too wide.
Too wide to come
Come up
down.
this
But it
road.
stopped up that highway down there all day. Nobody could get around it.
It was about 10 miles from here where they moved it.
And
They
I,
left down that one morning about 10 o'clock, and that afternoon about 7:30, We already had the foundation, and everything laid, and put the house
All they
on.
had to do
About
was
7 o'clock that afternoon, they put it on the foundation.
they set it down
Had to
there.
cut the water, power lines and all that stuff coming up through it.
It had to be cut down. We had to get permission to do that.
Yeah, we had to get a permission from the state.
They couldn't do it, just come up and cut them all down, but it was, it took all day, and as I said,
We numbered it when they cut it, before they cut they cut it on 45-degree angle, and before they cut it in two, we numbered the plank before.
and took them off, so they
So that when
wouldn't
they
have
went
to
to
be
put them back, we
cut.
put them back just like we had them counted.
It was great. Great experience. That's all I got, John.
Well, I could say, it's.
We had a lot of tales. Let me tell you this tale. Well, we could tell a lot of tales about our business and the drugstore business. I guess the most far-fetched tale was one night. It was in the summertime, and about 9 o'clock at night, and the doorbell rang. When our front doorbell rang, we knew it was a stranger because everybody else always drove around to the back. We went to Jack and I went to the door, and I said, stood this little girl, I guess she was 19, 20 years old, and she was hardly had any clothes on. And she says, are you Mr. Cline? I said, yes. She said, Mr. Cline says, we're camping, you know. We got a big lake about 10 miles from here, Wise Lake. It's the Georgia Power Company lake, Alabama Power Company. Anyway, she says, we're camping on the lake down here, and says, I forgot to bring my birth control pills.
Yeah.
Was that not
Would you
something?
please go to the drugstore and let me have one?
One?
And I said, ma'am, it's just as much against the law for me to sell you one to sell you a month's supply. I said, I can't do that. And finally, she kept on, and finally she saw that she wasn't getting anywhere, so she left. I never have seen her again. But anyway, I thought that was really
I told Horace, I said,
Come to a
if it
stranger's
been anybody
house.
to come after birth control, it would've been the man. I sure wouldn't have been coming after birth control. Gosh.
Great story. That's a great story. Love it.
We had a lot of.
Small town, it wasn't that small, was it?
No, it was, you just wouldn't believe what some people think you ought to do. You know, they just don't see any reason why you can't do it. After all, you know who they are.
They also think, you know, it's a small town, you can do most anything and get by with it. That wasn't true. Not only in the drugstore, but in other businesses in town. The bank has been real successful. In fact, we've sold the bank a couple of times. But it's owned now by an outfit out in Barrow, Georgia, called United Community Bank. They have a big bank in Rome and several branches, and we have this one here. And I was instigated in that, and I was instigated in having a builder supply place, which Mr. Lindsay and I operated for about 10 or 15 years. And then I was instigated in building those houses because we didn't have any land, so we bought land and built houses. And what else have I done?
Whatever came about.
Hmm?
Whatever came about, you did it.
I'm real grateful for Case Spring. They've been good to us.
Horace grew up without relatives. He didn't have a mother or daddy. His daddy died when he was, what, 7?
Mm-hmm.
Mother died when he was 11. He's not ever had anybody ask him if he'd gotten his homework or
Passed or failed.
no. He signed his own report cards and
Back in those days, you had a report card. On one side, you had your classes you were taking in 9 months for your letter. And on the back, your parent was saying, I just signed mine and hand it back in.
of course I signed it afterwards. He had to do a whole lot better when I got to sign it.
Funny.
Is that all you need to know? Is that all you want to know? Do you have any questions?
Well, you know, this is,
No, I've enjoyed this very much, very
I
much.
think this has
We've
been
married
great.
64 years.
We've remodeled this house about 3 or 4 times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have.
When Jackie's father died not too long after we were married, and And he had told us that he would love for us to live here with his wife too.
Well, he had left the house to me,
Right.
my house, but my mother was still alive. In fact, my mother remarried about 10 years after my daddy died.
Tell me your maiden name.
Okay, my maiden name was Norton, Norton, Norton.
So how old would she have been when she remarried?
Well, I guess she was in her 40s.
Oh, okay, I
She
think
was
she was
my
older.
Mother.
Well,
How old was she when she remarried?
Oh, I thought she was
wasn't
older.
Oh,
Mother.
she was older than 30, mother.
I
Your
did
daddy
say
was,
30, I said
daddy was
40.
48 when he died, and she and your father was about the same age.
So I'd put her in her 50s, late 50s then.
And she was about 60, I guess, or something like that. She married a man in Rome that had been a friend of the families for a long, long time. She had known him ever since she'd been in Cave Spring. He was one that took the old theater building and made a grocery store out of it.
Okay.
Well, it's not a grocery store any longer. It's a
She always
three
said
things.
that he married her because he loved me.
He
I
did.
loved him.
He bought an umbrella one time, real fancy umbrella. I mean, it was a beautiful umbrella. And he bought it, gave it to Jack. He said, "You're the only one I know that
Maybe enough to carry this kind of noise.
Why didn't you shoot him, Horace? Couldn't shoot your father-in-law, I guess.
No. He loved Horace too, but he
Jack was his favorite. He had a son.
didn't have any daughters.
Okay.
And I loved him.
We
His
tried to
mother died within 14 days of each other.
deal now on a spring out here that puts out 1.3 million gallons of water a day. And at one time we were going to try to develop it in bottled water. This was back before everybody got in the water business. And we could do anything except we couldn't get anybody to distribute it. And you know, you can't sell it, you don't need to have anything. So we didn't proceed the water business, but it's still out there. It flows in this big lake down here by my house. It's in the city limits.
Yeah, I think that's good, John. I think we might come back sometime.
He's well, you heard him mention the deal a time or two. His cousin was superintendent of county board of education. And when we get out, they're gonna close our school. And Jill and I get in the car, we run up there, and we go in. Harold would be sitting there. He said, "Come on in, boy." I said, "I know why you're here." He said, "We're not gonna close your school. He said, if your school is ever closed, it'll be done on the state level." Well, Harold, we did that for I don't know how many years. But anyway, Harold came down with cancer. And so Jill went by to see him one afternoon in the hospital, and Harold said, "Now, Jill, you and Horace can start worrying now." Said Neville Jones is going to be your county school superintendent. Said first thing he's going to do is close Cave Spring School. Well, we started thinking about it, and that happened when he got appointed school. The first thing he did was they wanted to close Cave Spring School and take our kids to Cooster, about 12 miles away.
Yeah, see, for me, from where I live, it's a
Yeah.
45-minute drive.
Your phone is ringing.
Anyway,
That'd be a good story. That right there is a good story.
I had a friend in the
Good
city
story.
down, Mr. Tripp. Well, he was my friend too, 'cause he used to,
He had
Tom
New Year's
Murphy.
dinner with us every New Year.
Tom Murphy was a real influential guy in the state of Georgia, probably the most powerful guy that ever lived in the state
Speaker of the House for a long, for 30-something years.
And if you wanted something and he was on your side, you could get it. He had told us that if we kept our school, he would appropriate enough money to do whatever we needed to do to keep our high school down here. His brother had arthritis, and Jackie's brother at one time was having real good success in arthritis. We had people coming from here from all over the United States and some foreign countries to be treated with arthritis.
Straight.
And Mr. Murphy, they were both partners, they were both lawyers, and Mr. Murphy's brother couldn't, he had to sit on the edge of the seat and lay his head back like that in order to ride. Well, of course, he couldn't come in the drugstore and get his medicine, but Mr. Tom always came in and got his medicine. So through the years, well, he and I got to be real good friends too. So one morning, when I get back to school, anyway, we got up a petition. It was cold on Sunday afternoons. We get out here, we'd ride all over town and get people to sign a petition to do away with that county school board. And we got enough names. But it just so happened that we didn't have any friends, and they didn't follow through with it. And there wasn't anything we could do. They took the papers and tore the names up and so forth. Anyway, to make a long story short, they closed our school. And then one day, we woke up one Monday morning and there was a bunch of state trucks parked over near where the school used to be. One time we had a black school and a white school, kids, deaf kids, and they would let them go. No, not they didn't do it. But anyway, we didn't have any problem with the schools, and so but the deaf population started going down. The reason it was that a lot of the kids that was over there in the school with deafness was not born deaf. They had some childhood disease that caused them to lose their hearing. But then it came along with all these antibiotics and so forth and so on, Medicare and so forth, and those kids could get medicine and they didn't lose their hearing. So we got down, I think, about 125 or 50. At one time they had 500-600 kids here.
Had almost 700 in 1971.
Deaf.
Right at 700.
Anyway, we had the black school was down this on this road, and the other school was over across the street. Across the street from the swimming pool. By the way, we have the largest swimming pool. Our second outlaw largest swimming pool in the state of Georgia. And water comes right out of the cave that what the city doesn't pump up to the reservoir, and it flows in that swimming pool, and jumping into it is about like jumping into a tub of ice water. Oh, cold, cold, cold. Anyway, this particular morning, there was a bunch of county trucks down in town, and we didn't know what was going on, so we went out and found out. And they said, we're fixing to put up signs, we're fixing to close the school for these buildings over there that are not being used, we're going to make a prison out of them. And all that just set everybody on town on fire, because we didn't want a prison. Back there looking at the prisons be over there looking to fit the girls in the swimming pool, you know. So to make a long story short, I called up Mr. Tripp and told him, and so he called Mr. Murphy and made an appointment. So he and I went down there one afternoon at about 1 o'clock, and we went in, and he said they made small talk. They had known each other. Mr. Tripp had been chairman of the board of the banking department. Mr. Murphy had been the Speaker of the House, and he controlled it with a whip. I mean, what he said was it. So we told him what we wanted, and he told his secretary, said, whatever her name was, get me so-and-so down at the state capitol. In a few minutes, she came back to Mr. Tripp. I gotta have your party on the line. And he said this to Mr. Murphy, whatever the guy's name was, what his name, said, hey, he said, you know that plan to build that that prison up at Cave Spring? And I guess the guy said, he said, well, put a hold on it. Drop your receiver down, that's all we ever heard about. Never did hear nothing.
Well, at one time, W.D. Tripp was the chairman of the State Democratic Party, right?
Right.
So I was down in his office way back there when Busby was governor. And every time I went down there, he was on the phone to Governor Busby, telling him what to do.
Well,
Which is sort of interesting, you know. And then W.D. always wore black pants, black coat, white shirt, black bow tie, and a black fedora. And he looked like something out of a movie. But he had the power, and it was always rumpled. It was just a real rumpled suit.
When that dormitory that's built over there, facing
Sanders Hall?
huh?
Oh, the one right next to the road?
Sanders.
Yeah.
When Carl Sanders ran for governor, if Carl hasn't run, they wanted Mr. Tripp to run, and they kept putting it off to run for governor. And Mr. Tripp's wife wasn't well, and he knew if he was governor, he'd have to be gone foot and lock, so he told him no, he couldn't do it. So they got Carl Sanders to run, and Carl Sanders was like the governor.
It's interesting to see, like the School for Deaf over there, it'd be an interesting story there. You had the Griffin building after Governor Griffin, you had the Sanders building after Governor Sanders, the Talmadge building after Governor Talmadge, Every governor built a building here up through,
Have a Talmadge building over there? You
Yeah.
said Talmadge?
yeah, I said
Okay, I
Talmadge, yeah.
didn't- I don't.
Yeah,
get it.
every one of those governors was building a building up until about 70, and then it
While they
all
were in
stopped.
the
Yeah,
administration.
yeah, it all stopped. But it was pretty interesting. A little old town like this had that much swing that every governor had to build something here. Yeah, those are the days. Yeah, so you got those type of stories, John. You got lots of little ancillary stories. See, like Arnold Looney, you was talking about Faye
Yeah.
a while ago.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, some of those old farmers out there, their relationship to the town would be interesting.
right.
Here he was a man back in the 50s farming with a mule out here in Booger Hollow.
Grady used to say that Arnold Looney was the fastest man he'd ever seen. They went to school together over Gator Road.
Cedar Bluff, yeah,
Cedar Bluff,
yeah.
somewhere.
Yeah, he could run. He wasn't about that tall.
After swapping along.
Yeah,
Talk about it.
yeah. Arnold was a mess. He had a wife that was about 5'6" and he was about 5'2". They were a hoot. And he was chubby and she was skinny. I thought they were
Like Bud
funny.
and Jeff, wasn't
Like
it?
Bud and Jeff, they were just a hoot. But their relationship to the community back when he was, hard scrabble farmer out here. See, Herschel Mize was delivering mail after World War I, 1919, right? Y'all know anything about that?
Right.
See, to me, that's a lot of history right there. He was a fighter pilot in World War I, highly decorated, came back to Cave Spring, delivered mail.
Now wait.
We have no history.
No, that was his son.
That was his son.
Yeah.
Right, but
He
he
was-
never did deliver mail.
His
That
son,
was,
his son was one of those boys I told you went to Darlington when Jackie's brother
Okay,
went.
all right.
And they graduated up there, and Harvey used to say the boy started out being left-handed, and they changed him to right-handed. And Harvey used to say that what was it, Charles? So Charles Mize, they changed him from left-handed to right-handed and made a genius out of him. He ended up in General Marine Corps.
right.
When he
See,
retired.
nobody knows that now. See, there's some
Yeah.
history.
I'll tell
Yeah.
you, if you could get a couple of their classmates, if anyone in town, or even older people, 3 or 4 of them together, I'll bet you would come up with a lot of stories if you just got them.
Yeah, they start jogging each other's
Yes,
memory.
yes, and I bet you would get a lot of stories then. I think that's what you all plan to do,
So
John.
he's talking about his friend Dewell. Dewell's what, 93 now, 94?
90. He'll be 91 December.
Oh, 91, I thought he was older. But he's got what, 3 brothers, and they all grew up here, and they all got stories.
Yeah.
Shelton is up, what, 95?
Yeah, he's older than you.
Yeah, he's older. And then
Earl,
Earl,
Earl Jean.
he's
Earl
the
Jean,
baby.
2 ton.
Reba. I
Huh?
have
Reba is
one
the sister.
One
They only
sister,
have one
yeah.
sister.
Yes, that, if you got all them together, I can't imagine the stories that would
Oh,
come
would come
out.
out of it. Yes, a lot of history.
Well, they have
Cause they're all living and they're right there in their 90s and they all grew up
Lindsay.
here in this town.
The Lindsay's moved here after World War II,
Oh, really?
from down at
Oh, see, I didn't know.
40, not 40,
Center,
Center, well,
T,
anyway.
Yeah,
That's
I
where
know
it's been here
those
since.
Oh, see, I didn't, I thought they'd been here forever.
Mr.
Okay.
Lindsay was a big farmer. He moved to Cave Springs and opened a hardware store.
Yeah,
It
that was Dewell's daddy?
yeah, Dill's
Dewell's
daddy.
daddy.
When Dill came back out of service, then he came in and went to work for him. Dill was not married at the time. But while he was here, he married Martha Kay Lindsay. Martha
Well,
Kay.
see, when I was getting medicine from him at night, on February, it started snowing, it got cold. My pump wouldn't pump. 9 o'clock at night, I called Dewell Lindsay up. He jumped in his car, drove 10 miles out here to Booger Holler. 11 o'clock at night, he fixed it. That's just amazing.
He can
And
do
you can't do that anywhere
No,
except
he
Cave
was
Spring.
a mechanic in the Air Force.
Oh, was he? That's the reason he could fix it.
Yeah.
One night, several years ago, it's been a long time ago, so we didn't have any children. And I had a cousin that was at the point of death in Birmingham, and I had gone down there to see her. I don't know why Jackie didn't go, but she didn't. It was about 1 o'clock in the morning. I was coming through Gadsden, about 2 or 3 miles on this side of Gadsden. My car quit, and I knew I had plenty. I didn't know what to do, so I went over. Course, couldn't do that now. There was a light on the house across the street. I knocked on the door.
Didn't get shot.
Yeah, told who I was, and I said, could I use your phone? And they said, sure, come on in. So I went in and I called Jackie. I said, Jackie, I got problems. I'm about 2 or 3 miles this side of Gadsden, and the car stopped. He said, well, she said, let me see what I can do. So I waited at the house, and the folks were real nice. And So in a few minutes she called me back and said, Dale Lindsay is on his way down there in a pickup truck to pull you in. Well, when Dale got down there, he knew enough about mechanics. He said that, open your hood. So I opened the hood, and he took the cap off of
Points were off.
the points had jumped out. And the screw was still in there, so he took a piece of chewing gum and screwed it out. Honestly, reached down there and got those points and screwed them back in and guessing about where they were supposed to have gone. So I got in front of him and cranked up, and he followed me all the way to his place.
Oh, what a great story. See, that's the kind of stories I like, yeah. Yeah, that was friends right there, buddy. Friends. Yeah, well, see, Dale ought to have $1 million. If you got him and his brothers together, I just can't imagine stories
Well,
like that.
Dale, I don't know about,
Some of those boys don't talk very much.
no,
No, two ton is like pulling IT, get him
Right.
a ton. Yeah.
Have you done tape with Emily High Note?
You've got one, yeah. But
Okay,
It's not complete.
okay, I've got one. I haven't had time to look at it.
now
yet.
she's
it's
been here
been
forever.
it
Yeah, I
a-
was with her yesterday.
It was a long time
we
ago.
rolled around in
started
the
doing
rain.
this and then quit.
She was one of the ones that her husband went to Rome, and they told him they didn't borrow the money to build a house with, and they got the house half done. They called them and told them, no, they not going to run with the money.
But she was telling us a little
Oh, did
bit, and
she?
I
Okay.
wondered if it was her
Yeah,
when
it
you were
was.
telling your story.
I should tell you, he was an engineer with the WPA, and he came to build buildings at the School for the Deaf over here. That's the way she met him. Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of stories right there. That
Well,
all these buildings over here were built by the WPA back in the 1930s. A
And
lot of stories.
when they got married, she had not gotten her education, so she had to leave the children and go wherever it was she went.
Morganton, North Carolina, is where
And
she
get
went.
her
Really?
education.
Yeah, she went to school up in North Carolina.
Yeah,
Girl, I think both her girls went up there too, I'm not sure.
yeah, that's the School for the Deaf up there, the big school. Yeah, Morton. Yeah, so you got, John's got a full-time job.
I thought this was a group.
We had used to.
I thought this
we had
was a
train.
group
I was
thing.
talking to we talked about the train went from Rome to
Let
Gatlinburg.
me with you, boy.
But after the war, well, it wasn't too much. So finally got where the sort of railroad just had to close it because there wasn't enough money to keep it paid out.
When I was
We
a
did,
child though,
WPA
I had
with
relatives
Frank
that lived
and,
in Piedmont.
Emily.
Yeah, I
Mother
remember
would
I was
take me
there.
in my little
I
white
was there.
suitcase down and put me
Yeah, I
on
was
the
there.
train and tell me
Yeah,
to sit
digging
right
that
there.
pool
Don't
of wheelbarrows.
Don't get up. Just sit right here.
Yeah.
And when you get down to Piedmont, your uncle will come on the train. Don't get up. Just sit right there. And I was just like a statue.
When did they close all these iron ore pits around here? When did
What?
they close those?
What?
The iron ore pits, you know, they used to be,
Well, when Jack and I got married, they were still high.
they were still mining iron.
Yeah, there used to be a big platform where they would drive the dump trucks out and dump the ore down in,
Really?
in the coal cars. I guess where they
Yeah.
haul it off, haul it on.
See, I took a bunch of Cub Scouts hiking up the Pinhoti Trail last weekend, and there's these big iron pits all about through the mountains out through there.
Between here and where you live, you could the vegetation is growing on those holes up there, but you could drive by and see all those holes over on the side of the hill where they dug the
When I was a child, they loaded the trucks with guana out here.
Right.
And anytime when they would get a load of guana in, they
Fertilizer.
would,
I know Guyana very well.
anyway, that was what I was taught to call it,
Yeah.
guana.
Yeah, bat dung.
Anyway, they would, there was I would wake up at night and I would hear them saying, ooh.
Yeah,
They'd
100-pound
be unloading
bags.
that
Yeah.
guana, ooh, and they'd make a noise like that when they would do that. Putting it in the truck.
Ed.
And I had it, my daddy sold guana, so he quite often had his trucks up there and they were loading them and so forth.
You can make dresses out of